Good morning, and welcome everyone to West Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. Thanks to Zoom technology and the savvy folks who have put it all together for us. My name is Ann Harper, and I am Worship Associate for this Sunday's service. It is so gratifying to see so many here this morning. If you are a newcomer or you are returning for a second or third time, know that ours is a welcoming congregation, which means that we are certified by the Unitarian Universalist Association as an LGBTQ congregation, opening our virtual doors to you. Please plan to stay for a while after fellowship or after the service for fellowship so that we may learn more about you. Today, instead of our usual spoken opening words, we are going to sing them. Paul will lead us in singing "Breathe in Peace, Breathe Out Love." May I suggest closing your eyes? If you are in circumstances that will allow it, reach out and hold hands with your companion and/or companions. You may even want to hug your kids. Paul.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was lovely. This is usually a time for announcements, but I have no announcements before me today. So we'll begin with the lighting of our chalice. We begin our service each week with the lighting of our handsome, inspiring chalice. Paul, if you will do the honors, I have these words spoken by Mariel Perez Simons at the opening celebration of the UUA General Assembly, June 2019. May the fire of this chalice we light today guide us through our time together. May it warm our hearts. May it guide our actions. May it illuminate our thinking. And may it remain with you throughout our time together. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not bound ourselves to a creed or dogma. Rather, we enter into a covenant with each other, agreeing to do our best to live by the principles listed therein. If you would please project the covenant on our monitors so that we may read it together. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our holy right, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in friendship. Thus do we covenant. Our church is a body of people currently wishing we could hug and break bread together on the patio and sing together in our sanctuary. We also realize it might be a while before we can do that safely again. Meanwhile, the patio and the sanctuary, the RE building, and the fellowship space are there to be maintained. There's the mortgage, city water, power, the needs of which have not altered. Each week, we take up an offering to help sustain our buildings and campus. During the following offertory music, you could use this quiet time to write your supporting check, which can be mailed to the church, or you might consider a scheduled auto-pay arrangement with your bank. Paul, may we have the offertory music, please? Thank you so much, Joe. It is always a pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Reverend Cathy Corbin-Mannino, back to our pulpit. We know our day is about to be enriched. Reverend Cathy.
Thank you, Anne, and Joe for that music, and Paul. Those three voices were amazing in their blend. Thank you. Very nice. It's good to be with you. I want to start this morning with two quotes. The first one is from Lao Tzu. He who knows other men is discerning. He who knows himself is intelligent. And from St. Augustine. I would know God, I would know myself. The title of my talk is Emotional Life and Spiritual Development. And it was another Catholic saint, St. Ignatius of Loyola, who actually pioneered the integration of emotions and spirituality all the way back in the 1500s. He found that identifying and listening to our deepest feelings played a key role in discovering what he referred to as God's presence in our life. Other words to use besides God would be our higher self, our real self, free of ego, our divine self, our soul. St. Ignatius had 14 rules of discernment, ways to interpret one's emotional states, since he believed that emotions are the surest index to knowing ourselves, thus knowing God, because it is our emotions where love takes root. But not to worry, I'm not going to present all 14 of them, not even one. But I do believe in his premise that acknowledging and interpreting our emotions is immensely important to our spiritual development. Being attuned to that which is within us helps us in discerning healthy choices. Our emotions give us valuable information regarding the non-physical or metaphysical, but no less real, dimensions of what is going on both inside us and around us. And if we are able to be in touch with and rightly understand our feelings, they can provide us with insights into what aspects of our life are drawing us closer to divinity, our higher self, and what aspects are pulling us away from it. St. Ignatius hoped that over time, by fine-tuning this ability to feel and understand our emotions, we would become increasingly more skilled and sensitive to the ways that God, our higher self, reveals itself to us. It makes sense to me that if our emotions are able to put us more fully in touch with the core of our being, then understanding emotions will connect us more deeply with the God, the love, the truth, the soul that dwells within us. I believe that our spirituality our emotionality, our reason, our will, do not operate in isolation, but in integration, all of it working together. We are in integrity when we are capable of bringing our entire whole self into all dimensions of our life. And that intersection of emotions and our spiritual life leads to a fuller experience of what it means to be truly human. There is no moment as human beings in which we are only thinking or operating in the intellectual sphere, any more than there is a moment in which we are only feeling, operating only in the emotional sphere. What I have discovered is that with the deeper awareness of and sensitivity to my feelings, my spiritual life is transformed. And that means my ordinary life becomes extraordinary. I have been practicing 3 steps in this integration of emotions and spirituality throughout this pandemic sheltering process. Basically, out of a necessity to survive. With all the myriad of feelings that were coming to the surface, I had nowhere to run to avoid this process. Even I couldn't stay so busy in just 7 rooms for 7 months that I could continually ignore or run from or suppress all my emotions. These 3 steps were, number 1, acknowledge what I'm feeling and define it. It sounds easier than it is because, such as feeling frustrated can actually hide anger. Sadness can mask deep grief. I found it's important to keep asking, what am I really feeling? Until I get an aha, okay, that's it. I'm not just feeling frustrated, I'm angry. The second step was to ask why. Why am I feeling this particular way? So often it's much more than the current situation. It may often have deep roots from the past. And then 3, what do these feelings tell me about myself? How I see and feel about myself, or my perception of another person or the situation. These 3 steps are simple, but they are not easy, as I said. But they always provide me with real insight into myself and my world. And interestingly enough, I found that there was also a strong connection between emotions and virtuous actions. We know that emotions are neither good nor bad in themselves, but our responses to them can take on a moral character. It wasn't just about sitting and contemplating myself. The process encouraged virtuous behavior. It was a source of motivation to actually do something constructive. In an article from Psychology Today, Matthew Houston suggests that even negative emotions do us a great favor by saving us from ourselves. They are signals, urging us to change what we're doing, what we're thinking, and they're actually necessary for eventually feeling good. We have the wrong idea about emotions, he writes. They're very rational. They are tools carved by eons of human experience to direct us where we need to go. He explained that anger, for instance, may arise from feeling devalued and unloved. Anger can be a useful tool in learning to assert ourselves and build confidence. But when it bubbles over into rage, then anger morphs into a destructive force. While most negative emotions, such as fear, encourage us to avoid situations, they also stimulate approach. And he says well-directed and modulated anger can motivate us as individuals and as a society to take action. In this way, anger can fuel the progress of social justice. I found too in the process that emotions brought me closer to a sense of spirituality than just my beliefs alone. Disgust and repulsion at injustice can culminate in virtues of charity and mercy, which can spur us to take loving, peaceful, charitable action. A few weeks ago when I spoke on Grandparents' Day, I said that one of our gifts to the world is wisdom. However, just because we grow older doesn't mean we grow wiser or more emotionally mature. What is guaranteed is that the older we live, the more situations we will go through that tests our ability to listen to our emotions, to learn how to express them maturely and wisely, which can grow and deepen our spiritual development. The spiritual dimension looms largest in extreme situations when we are faced with great challenges or a major loss. This is part of the natural order of the human life. The wise approach is to keep our minds open to the possibilities of what we can learn and how we can change. A month ago, in just one day, I watched in the morning the memorial service of a friend who had died of COVID. And then that afternoon, I live streamed the graveside service of my aunt, the last member of my mother's immediate family. Now all those that I loved and spent every holiday with as a child are now gone. That same week, I heard about the diagnosis of lung and colon cancer in my brother, and discovered that 2 of my sons, my daughter-in-laws, and 4 grandchildren had been exposed to the coronavirus, and we all had to begin the quarantine process all over again, starting back at square one. Lots of feelings came up for me that week, and I realized that spiritual growth is all about recognizing those emotions that weighed me down so that I could let them go in order to move forward through the sadness and grief. Emotional release is the way the process resolves itself. Acceptance brings catharsis. The release of emotions is uncomfortable, such as when sadness is accompanied by tears, and so often we resist crying and may even apologize for it. But it is an essential part of the healing process. The very nature of our experiences allows us to heal and grow, but we must continue to work at it and trust the process of emotional healing and growth because it is cumulative. Emotional strength is built brick by brick. The process can happen quickly or slowly, depending on us, but we can never evolve without it. Often unexpectedly, after a period of considerable inner struggle, feelings of gratitude, renewed clarity, and a new level of spiritual understanding and wisdom is revealed. When I shared my struggle with my women's group, there was recognition that everyone faces similar troubles in their lives, and this increased our compassion and loving kindness toward each other. In his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, Peter Scazzaro writes, "I have found that telling people to love better and let go is not enough. They need practical skills incorporated into their spiritual formulation to grow out of emotional infancy and into emotional adulthood. It is easy to grow physically into a chronological adult. It is quite another to grow into an emotionally mature adult. Many people may be, chronologically, say, 74 years old, but remain an emotional baby, a child, or adolescent. A good question to ask then is, how can we distinguish our own emotional level of maturity? I'm going to share his brief summary of the emotional responses of infants, children, adolescents, and adults. It might be interesting to see which category you believe you fall into. Emotional infants. Look for others to take care of them. Have great difficulty entering into the world of others. Are driven by a need for instant and constant gratification. Use others as objects to meet their needs. Emotional children. Are content and happy as long as they receive what they want. They unravel quickly from stress, disappointments, trials. They interpret disagreements as personal offenses, are easily hurt. They complain, withdraw, manipulate, take revenge, become sarcastic when they don't get their way. They have great difficulty calmly discussing their needs and wants in a mature, loving way. Emotional adolescents tend to be, often, defensive, are threatened and alarmed by criticism, keep score of what they give so they can ask for something later in return, deal with conflict poorly, often blaming, appeasing, going to a third party, pouting, or ignoring the issue entirely, becoming preoccupied with themselves. They have a great difficulty truly listening to another person's pain, disappointments, or needs. They are critical and judgmental. Emotional adults are able to ask for what they need, want, or prefer, clearly, directly, honestly. They recognize, manage, and take responsibility for their own thoughts and feelings. They can, when under stress, state their own beliefs and values without becoming adversarial. They respect others without having them change. They give people room to make mistakes and not be perfect. They appreciate people for who they are, good, bad, and ugly, not for what they give back. They accurately assess their own limits, strengths, and weaknesses, and are able to freely discuss them with others. They are deeply in tune with their own emotional world and able to enter into the feelings, needs, and concerns of others without losing themselves. They have the capacity to resolve conflict maturely and negotiate solutions that consider the perspectives of others. Well, I know that I found little bits of myself in all 4 levels. Since this process is a natural human experience and necessary for our growth, why is it then that every adult does not eventually mature emotionally and spiritually? One reason concerns the very strong emotional likes, our attachments, and dislikes, our aversions, that naturally come into play. Each of us has emotions we seek to avoid and those we prefer. The natural tendency is for people to prefer joy over sorrow and calmness over anxiety, but we get into patterns or habits of emotional expression, and some of us, due to trauma and brokenness, get stuck. And we may relate to everyone, even our inner self, in emotionally immature ways. So what can be done? How can we learn to accept our emotions as they arise, become less attached to some and adverse to others, or when our feelings change in nature and intensity? First, admit to ourselves that something needs to be remedied. Pay close attention to our own emotional profile. Is our emotional response that of an adult, infant, child, adolescent? Which emotions do we prefer and which are we trying to avoid? Translate the emotions into words rather than just acting them out. And that requires what has been called your emotional intelligence, your EI. And that's the subject for my next talk. We might need to seek help from a health professional or self-help books or a trusted friend, or simply recommitting yourself to going deeper and staying with it until you find an effective remedy or spiritual discipline, such as meditation or yoga, journaling. And then, and only then, can you make a commitment to change, to choose another response that is more emotionally mature. Using your preferred remedy on a regular disciplined basis will lead to maturity. This is certain. Just as a physical wound healing is certain if the wound is kept clean, free of infection, and dressed regularly, the same is true for an emotional wound. Nature takes care of it if we let it. It will work if we work it. When I mentioned earlier that strong emotions can culminate in acts of virtue, such as repulsion at injustice can stir a desire for equality, which can then lead to acts of social justice, it was interesting for me to recently read in the introduction of a book called The Road to Character by David Brooks. He had been thinking about acts of virtue and the difference between he calls the resume virtues and the eulogy virtues. The resume virtues are those you list on your resume, the skills you bring to the job market that contribute to success. The eulogy virtues are deeper, the ones talked about at your funeral, those that exist at the core of your being: bravery, kindness, honesty, faithfulness. And that reminded him of yet another book he had read called The Lonely Man of Faith, written by Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik. He wrote that there were really 2 Adams in the creation story, and they represent the 2 opposing sides of the nature which he called Adam 1 and Adam 2. Adam 1 is all about the external. The resume, virtuous Adam 1 wants to build, create, produce, discover, win victories, enjoy high status. Adam 2 is all about the internal. Eulogy virtuous Adam 2 wants to embody moral qualities, a serene inner character, a solid sense of right and wrong, to love intimately, obey truth, serve others, honor creation and their own possibilities. Adam 1 asks how things work. Adam 2 wants to know why we're here. Adam 1 wants to venture forth. Adam 2 wants roots and the warmth of family. Adam 1's motto is success and victory. Adam 2 is love and redemption. Rabbi Soloveitchik believes that we live in the contradiction between these two Adams. And David Brooks added to that by saying that the hard part in living within the contradiction is that we are forever caught in self-confrontation, living forever within the tensions between these two natures who live by different logics. Adam 1 has a utilitarian logic. He wants to create, build, discover, and conquer the world. Adam 2 has a moral logic, wants to surrender himself to something greater outside of himself, to gain strength within himself. To nurture your Adam 1 career, you cultivate your strengths. To nurture your Adam 2's moral code, you confront your weakness. The paradox: Adam 1's success leads to the greatest failure, pride. In Adam 2's world, failure leads to the greatest success, humility and learning. The voice of Adam 1 is loud. Our culture nurtures Adam 1. So the author wanted to write a book about how we can build rich Adam 2 lives. I think I'm mistaken. The voice of Adam 1 is loud. Our culture nurtures Adam 2. So the author wanted to write a book about how we can build rich Adam 2 lives. Well, he was struggling with this because it can't be taught by listening to sermons or following abstract rules. There is no 7-point program or recipe book. Well, during this struggle, a friend of his by the name of David Jolly sent him an email that helped him cut to the chase. And he told him, quote, "The heart cannot be taught in a classroom intellectually to students mechanically taking notes. Good, wise hearts are obtained through lifetimes of scars. You can't teach it, or email it, or tweet it. It has to be discovered within the depths of one's own heart when a person is finally ready to go looking for it, and not before. The job of the wise person is to swallow the frustration and just go on setting an example of caring and digging and doing diligence in their own lives. The totality of their life, of the way they go about this in the smallest details, is what gets transmitted. Never forget that. The message is the person, perfected over a lifetime of effort that was set in motion by yet another wise person, now hidden from the recipient by the dim mists of time. Life is much bigger than we think. Cause and effect intertwined in a vast moral structure that keeps pushing us to do better, become better, even when we dwell in the most painful, confused darkness." Unquote. The author concludes that Adam 1 may achieve outer success by winning victories over others, but Adam 2 builds character by winning victories over the weakness within himself. Moral character is not innate, like our inherent worth and dignity. It is built with effort and struggle. We can't be the good person we may want to be unless we wage this campaign. We won't achieve enduring external success unless we build a solid moral core. If we don't have inner integrity, eventually a Watergate, a scandal, a betrayal will happen. The author concludes that ultimately Adam 1 depends upon Adam 2. At one point in his life, Ralph Waldo Emerson rejected what he called corpse-cold Unitarianism. He was torn between the parish ministry, modeled by his father, and the poetic feeling inspired in him by his Aunt Mary Moody Emerson, whom he called his earliest and best teacher. I want to end today's talk with 2 phrases that she gave Emerson that stayed with him his entire life. When he was struggling with which direction to go, she said, "Do what you are afraid to do." And she always greeted him with this question: "How is thy soul?" That's a great question to ask ourselves and each other. How is my soul? How is your soul? Jamaican poet Claude McKay wrote a poem called Know Thy Soul. I plucked my soul out of its secret place and held it to the mirror of my eye to see it like a star against the sky. A twitching body quivering in space, a spark of passion shining on my face. And I explored it to determine why this awful key to my infinity conspires to rob me of my sweet joy and grace. And if the sign may not be fully read, if I can comprehend but not control, I need not gloom my days with futile dread, because I see only a part and not the whole. Contemplating the strange, I'm comforted by this tranquilizing thought. I know my soul. May that be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Cathy. Oh, for those signposts toward a path for introspection. Today we conclude our service with the unison reading of West Valley's mission statement, after which we will extinguish the chalice and the postlude will be played. Paul? We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. As we extinguish the chalice, bringing today's service to a close, I offer these words. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere you go. Before moving to the postlude music, let's join in thanking those whose dedication, capabilities, and generosity have made this service possible. Joe and Kristen, Barry, Jan, our office manager who keeps us posted on the latest, Paul for manning the controls, and of course, Reverend Cathy. There will be a brief pause following the postlude while Paul changes the mute setting.